Hello guys, Sandwich Twitch here, and I am back from my trip. So, it's back to business, although I've only posted one video before this. So I decided what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to start uploading daily videos from now on. Now I'm going to want some input and I'm going to need some more ideas and stuff for videos. But yeah, I have a few ideas to tie me over until then. And what I have for you today are what I think are the worst feuds of the PG era. Now I know the PG era isn't known for having the best feuds, but I picked the top 10 of what I think were the worst. And these are really in no particular order, but I'll get started here. So, I have John Cena versus John Laurinaitis from 2012. It seemed that all the promos that they cut on each other were absolutely terrible. They were so bad they got to the point where John Cena would just interrupt John Laurinaitis with calling him a loser. And the matches were obviously just horrible. Overall, I thought John Laurinaitis was pretty boring, especially his mic skills. Damn. I mean, some say Cena's boring too, which I kind of agree with that to a certain degree. Back in the old days, he was actually pretty entertaining. I will admit, however, that at No Way Out 2012, I was pretty glad when Laurinaitis finally got fired. That guy was seriously like ruining the business for me. Next, what we have here is Chavo Guerrero versus Hornswoggle from 2009. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you knew that this one would be on the list. This literally damaged Chavo Guerrero's career, and he never recovered from it. I thought he was a pretty decent wrestler, and he didn't deserve that. I'm not saying he was the best, but he definitely didn't deserve Hornswoggle. He was basically just being humiliated every week by that dwarf who would just run and hide under the ring most of the time. It was absolute garbage. I think one day I actually changed the channel when one of their matches was on, which isn't very common for me because I am a huge wrestling fan. I'll usually watch everything, for the most part. It's really just these terrible feuds that made me want to turn the television off at times. So next, we have Michael Cole versus Jerry Lawler from 2011. I thought this rivalry had way too much airtime for just two non-wrestlers. I know Lawler used to be, but he's old now and shouldn't be hogging all the spotlight. It just wasn't entertaining. These two never honestly had a good match together, which isn't very surprising. The whole thing was just absolutely pointless. I don't know why WWE thought this would be a good idea, and I really have nothing else to say about it. It was a disappointment, that's it. Next, what I had was Christian versus Randy Orton. And I know there's going to be some of you out there that actually like that one. I just wasn't too into it. I'm a pretty big fan of both of these guys, but I just didn't like the storyline very much where Christian held the title for like less than a week, it was like 5 days or something, and loses it on a SmackDown. He went from the World Heavyweight Champion to some whiny heel that looks bad because he lost to Orton almost every match they had during this feud. And I felt bad for Christian here. I was definitely cheering for him here. All this really did was take a lot of value out of the World Heavyweight Championship itself and slap all of us Christian fans in the face. Don't get me wrong, Randy Orton's awesome, but at the time he just came to SmackDown and he probably shouldn't have gotten that title shot like his first day or whatever. Alright, next what I have here is Vince McMahon versus Bret Hart from, I believe it was 2009 leading into 2010 or sometime around there. This was just a huge waste of time. I was honestly never a huge fan of Bret Hart. He's a great technical wrestler, there's just something about him I really can't stand. So I was obviously disappointed to see him come back. These two are just getting old, they shouldn't be wrestling anymore. They definitely shouldn't be hogging the spotlight. I guess you could say the build-up was okay, but the actual WrestleMania match was terrible. Not like I had my hopes up high for this by any means, but it was just pointless. Just Vince and Brett trying to put themselves out there again. Okay, next what I have is The Miz versus Jerry Lawler. This was just bad. Just the sound of Miz versus Jerry Lawler is bad. I was excited when The Miz won the WWE title, but his reign was hilariously terrible. It's not completely his fault though. WWE probably shouldn't have had him feud with a 60-year-old commentator. I mean, come on. Luckily, it was a pretty short feud. It was like a month of Raws plus a pay-per-view or something like that. I don't know exactly. That's just my estimate. But if it would have lasted any longer, this actually could have made me stop being a fan. Probably for like a week, I don't know. It happens here and there. It was at the point where I was pretty much embarrassed just to watch WWE. This rivalry just sucked. So, moving on. I've got Triple H versus Kevin Nash from 2011. First off, they had a rivalry back in 2003, and it was absolutely unwatchable. I don't know why they thought it would be a good idea to try this one again. I was never that big of a Kevin Nash fan, but he proved to me during this one how awful his mic skills are. Both men are obviously past their prime, but Triple H can still have pretty decent matches, but Nash sure can't. I don't know if he ever really could have, 5-star matches like Triple H could back in the day. This feud literally got me to stop watching wrestling for probably like 2 weeks, but that's a lot for me. I am addicted to wrestling. They had Triple H with a guy that could not wrestle, could not talk. I mean, seriously, when he powerbombed someone around that time, he like nearly broke their necks. This feud was just plain awful. Alright, like I said, this isn't really in any order, but I'm down to my last 3 here. So I chose Mickie James versus Lay Cool from, I believe it was 2010, I'd like to say. And yes, I realize this is a diva feud, but I felt that it deserved to be mentioned. It was just not entertaining at all. I thought it was pretty childish with the Piggy James stuff. Correct me if I'm wrong, this was Mickie James' last feud in WWE due to her country career, I believe. And I hated to see her go out this way, honestly. I guess this sort of helped Layla establish herself as a top diva, but that's really the only good it did. The whole thing was basically about humiliating Mickie. So now what I've got here is Jack Swagger versus The Big Show. This one took place during one of the worst World Heavyweight Championship title reigns of all time. It was very forgettable. Some people might not even know that Jack Swagger ever held the title. If so, then congrats. You've got a great memory. If not, then this is a refresher to you. Swagger came out to talk about his accomplishments, I remember, and Big Show later came out and destroyed the whole set. And I've got to admit, I thought that was actually kind of entertaining. But the match was horrible at Over the Limit 2010, I believe. It was around that time period. And then the last one I've got here is John Cena versus The Miz from 2011. I think this was the worst feud during the entire PG era in my opinion, if I had to pick. The whole thing just seemed like it was more in between John Cena and The Rock other than the actual WWE champion, The Miz. I was happy to see The Rock return. I really was, but he kinda hogged The Miz's spotlight in this feud. I actually liked the segment though where The Miz came out dressed as The Rock, and he got a pretty decent pop, and he attacked John Cena and hit him with a microphone and stuff. I thought that was pretty good. But everything else was awful. Especially the match at WrestleMania itself. That was probably one of the worst WrestleMania matches I've ever seen. But let me know what you guys think. What were your guys' least favorite feuds during the PG era? Oh, and just a little heads up, I'm also planning on making a best feuds of the PG era at some point. So thanks for watching the video. Please leave a like and subscribe. And definitely comment what you guys think. Alright, see you next time.